I'm now going to introduce Dr. John Thompson, who is the founder and CEO of Extract Lab. And he's going to be presenting today on what is the endocannabinoid system. And from one medical professional to another medical professional, I think this topic is extremely important. And I still joke around because back in 1998, when I looked at my anatomy and pathology book, I saw there highlighted the endocannabinoid system. I can see Dr. John Thompson already in the corner of my screen laughing when I say that as well too. So, Dr. John Thompson, optimizing global success in cannabis. Dr. John Thompson is a separation scientist, entrepreneur, but also an inventor. As a CEO that is also a scientist, he brings a unique analytical perspective to everything that he does. Whether it's inventing new technology or building a business, he has a strong technical background in analytical instrumentation, biotech, mining, and homeland security markets. During his cannabis career, Dr. Thompson has a strong record of helping companies set up hemp, adult use, and medical cannabis extraction and processing facilities. Dr. Thompson has assisted in hundreds of companies to attain their goals in cannabis and hemp extraction and manufacturing, as well as a market development, strategic marketing, and worldwide business-to-business alliance formation. But he also does international markets too. And for everyone on this event today, pay attention. It's really important to be able to do work both domestically and internationally. Dr. Thompson has received a Bachelor's of Science degree in biochemistry, has received a Master's of Science degree in chemistry, and a Doctor of Chemistry degree, all from the University of Minnesota. Dr. Thompson, thank you for being here today. The floor is yours.
I'm going to unmute here. How you guys doing? Good to see you all. There's a small echo here. Let me just kind of make that happen. Okay, I think we're all set. So, all right. Welcome to everybody here. Appreciate you joining us. Today, we're going to be talking about optimizing your investment, optimizing your business for investment. We're going to be talking a little bit about, my experience and where we really have invested in the cannabis space, and maybe it'll be somewhat of an inspiration to you guys. One thing about this market that's so great is there's so much opportunities for everybody. You're talking about a market that's growing at 20% compound annual growth rate plus. There are any number of ways to make money. And I've already reviewed some of the details from some of the presenting companies. I'm very interested to hear more from the owners and the founders of those companies. Just exciting amounts of work. And what we do, we actually have put hundreds and hundreds of people into the business of either hemp processing or hemp or cannabis processing, and has spent a lot of time dealing with those types of customers, getting them up and running from basically starting with nothing, whether it be a farmer or a processor, whether they're a GMP provider or not. We've literally put hundreds of people in the business. As a consequence of that, we have spent a lot of time reviewing their business plans. We've learned a lot about how to help them along. Sometimes talk them out of doing the business altogether because they just weren't ready, or they just didn't have the right business plan associated with it. So I'm just going to, first of all, give you a background on my business. I'm in the ancillary business. And let me kind of just pull up a presentation here. Okay, there we are. So the title of the talk is really optimizing your business, or optimizing your investment, or optimizing your investment portfolio for success. I'm going to speak to all three of those topics, in fact. And one of the interesting things when I was in 2014, when I first gave my first pitch to some investors, I really started talking about selling picks and shovels to the people who are going to be building the industry. And, it was at the time, it was a 15-minute presentation. It was really quick. And we started our ancillary business, basically focused on equipment, supplies, consulting, and consumables for the botanical extracts market. I'm going to go over with you what our successes were there. I'm going to talk about some of the profitable sectors within that ancillary market. Also, our views on market trends, what we see in the market taking place. And then I'll give you some 3 keys for optimizing your investment, along with some recommended resources that we'll plug for you there. So what is it that we do? A lot of companies are out there. They're looking for ways to make their business model work. What we do is we enable companies to really purify and produce active ingredients. And those can be botanical active ingredients. They can be pharmaceutical active ingredients. And a lot of times the customers that we deal with, they don't really have, some of them have the technical background, some of them do not. Some of them have the business background. And sometimes we can put technical and business people together to really make it work for them. So we enable in unique combinations of aromas and flavors with our technology. We apply technology, and we're able to, for example, enable the formulations and proprietary blends that people then bring out into the marketplace. We enable derivatives and purified extracts. And here are just some examples, aloe vera, mint, botrytia, arnica flower, and many, many others, really botanical extracts that are used in some sort of medicinal compounds or phytonutrients or phyto ingredients that are then brought out into the marketplace. And what's wonderful about this is that we do this from an equipment, consulting, and consumable standpoint. And that's how we really serve the market. So we're really there to apply science. That's been the very foundation of our company. And by the way, it should be the foundation of your company as well. You want to make sure that you are applying the right science in the right place in the right time. So when you're thinking about how you're going to really conduct your business, science is the #1 thing. And what that will allow you to do is create proprietary solutions, proprietary mixes, proprietary designs that then go out into the marketplace. People pay for proprietary things, whether that be on a unique design or a unique formula. They want something that's unique. They don't want something like everybody else is doing. So here's just an example of some of the brands that we've put out in the past couple of years. And we started originally with our flagship Extract Lab brand. That's our extractor brand. And since that time, we put out many different equipment brands and also consumables. We have software in there, like I said, medical packaging and drug delivery, also with, from the standpoint of, consulting, getting people up and running on their GMP protocols. And these are things that are required by compliancy markets. So, we really help people, succeed. We've done a lot in terms of making sure that we invest in the science. From those of you who are out there just starting your companies, if you're starting from an engineering background, you want to make sure you have that science down, but then make investments in the business side, and vice versa. If you're a scientist, startup type of person, and you feel that you're going to go out to market, you really need to have that business background or a business partner there to really focus on, for example, raising money, or focus on the financials. You're going to need audited financials if you really want to go public or anything like that. So these are the things that those people are going to help you to do. So like I said, we've been very, very successful. We're probably one of the very few ancillary companies that are out there that are actually profitable. For example, we drove almost 7 million to the bottom line here in the trailing months. These are some of the awards that we have on the very bottom. We have achieved 204 on the Inc. 5000 list with a 2,140% growth. And you can see we've been building up really slowly. It took a lot of work to do that. I know you guys who are just starting your companies, you're just starting them, and we bootstrapped this whole thing. Very, very difficult to do. I always clamoring for cash, for working capital. When you're growing that much, how do you really make that work? So something you need to think about is making sure that you have enough working capital so that you can actually deliver the products that you are about to, deliver to the rest of the world. It's important also that along the way you make investments in certifications, and whether or not that's a certification for, say, a child-proof packaging certification. If you're in the consumer side, a clean label is a really big deal these days. Consumers are demanding, higher, cleaner ingredients, higher quality ingredients that are naturally derived. um, you know, Obtaining organic certifications. These are the things that your customers are going to like. And in turn, they're going to reward you with more sales, which always is going to drive more to the bottom line. Here's an example. We actually operate in two different facilities that are about 10 miles away from each other. We have a large manufacturing facility. It's a welding shop, and we have a whole bunch of certifications, ISO 9000 certification. But one of the things that really makes us unique among other companies is that we have a 68,000 actually operating GMP certified application center. That's really interesting because we have a full-on laboratory. Our customers can come here and they can see it. And anybody listening to this who wants to learn about how processing really takes place, you're welcome to come and visit us, and look at our materials that we have on the web. We have a tremendous amount of learning materials, including mini courses. So I wanted to kind of go over how I really look at the ancillary market. Back when I was working for corporate America, we would always make these what we called strategy maps. It was kind of a big thing back then in the 90s. And really what you would do is you would lay out a process, and then you would look where you're playing, and then you'd look upstream and downstream, and that would allow you to either formulate an acquisition strategy or formulate a product strategy or something like that, so that you can acquire in the proper amounts in the proper places. And what you see on the map here is how we typically look at the botanical extracts market. You can see here where we're really not looking at the growing side at all, but we look at how the products are made once the biomass is grown. And when I say biomass, I'm not talking only about cannabis. I'm not talking only about hemp. That's very limiting to a marketplace. You need to think about the total biosphere, if you will, because there's a lot of different compounds, botanicals that have an effect actually on the endocannabinoid system. And you can use those in their botanical extracts that have nothing to do with hemp, for example, or even have nothing to do with cannabis. So open your mind on your target market. But we're in this picks and shovels, and you can see that means lab services, lab equipment, excipients, packaging, manufacturing equipment. You can see that as you go through this process, you can see that there's potency testing. That's where all the quality equipment is. You can imagine there's lots of consumables associated with that. If you go all the way to the bottom with the end products, that's where you're talking about, that's where all the excipients are. That's where all the packaging is. That's where all of the brands are really sitting there in that end products world. And that's where, that can also be a very lucrative area to play. If you're actually producing the packaging yourself, as opposed to just distributing it. So yeah, there's a whole bunch of different ways. We operate in pre-processing, extraction, post-processing, and end products. So we first started off with the extract lab extractor, which is right there in the middle. And then we went upstream and downstream. So, and interestingly enough, we're getting heavily into the end product side of this with medical packaging and medical formulations and unique excipients. So this is an example of, the typical process that someone would go through in an ancillary way. They'd want to move from the left hand to the right hand side into a higher degree of purity, potency, and identity. And you can see what we did and how we did it was we said, okay, we looked at the value chain, and we said, okay, well, we're going to start here, and then we're going to innovate upstream and downstream of that. I encourage you to, when you're making your presentations and your pitches to, when you have more time to go through it with an investor, it's always good to make up some sort of strategy map saying, hey, this is what the market really looks like. Here's where we're playing, and here's a picture of really what it looks like. So, like I was saying, when we doing that and following that strategy, along with a market strategy, which was focusing on, botanicals, we really had a really great success. Right now, we're right around 25 million in sales. We have a very nice EBITDA. Bottom line of about 7, and this year we'll be doing very, very well as well. This is some examples, some customers that we put together. You can see this. This is the people actually using, either consulting services that we have or buildings that we put together. It's really exciting to see it all come together. So, let me give you some probably more unique aspects on what I see as the market trends. One of the things that we've seen from our customer base and from people who want to get in, the entrepreneurs, they're really looking at, the public and private bureaucracy in a lot of cases really circumvented the ability for them to access the market. That's from the SBA side, the DEA side, the FDA side, the national banks, and worse of all, the private, in other words, the private companies like Amazon, Facebook, Yahoo, Google, Bing. It's very difficult for them to, for example, take a hemp product or a cannabis product. They can't really advertise. So they're really spending a lot of time struggling against the entire machinery, the bureaucracy against them. So that really is not changed. And ostensibly, they're saying that that's going to change. So when that does happen, we ought to see an explosion of, first of all, not only marketing of people who are waiting in the sidelines, but also just an explosion in terms of the packaging and all of the ancillary businesses going way up. So banking reform is number one. I'm looking forward to it. It's going to give ostensibly access to capital markets from a lot of our customers. They're really not able to access them. And it possibly will end that internal bureaucratic war on the legal hemp and marijuana markets, which would be really great. It would enable that. So the law, which took and enabled freedom within the market, the bureaucracy basically took away. So we really like to see that kind of regulation relaxed. And then MJ reform will not change the laws in other countries. So that's something to note. Those of you who are investors and those of you who are investing, there still are other laws. For example, CBD, which is in the US, you can move it across state lines. It's not considered a pharmaceutical drug. In Canada, it's still considered a pharmaceutical drug. In Europe, we have novel food regulations that are taking place. And there's, depending on the company that you're dealing with, there's lots of different types of regulations. So you need to be cognizant and aware of that as you make up your business plans. But the fundamentals of the market are still there. They're still looking at pretty good market growth, which is really great. You still have the main drivers as I see them. One of the things that people really use, like the endocannabinoid botanical systems for, is to reduce or eliminate maybe opioids for pain purposes. So that's something that is a key driver in the marketplace, I think, and a key adoption driver. Increased demand for natural ingredients is more of a general thing. Clean label. When you get to the point where you can sell to, for example, Whole Foods or a Kroger's grocery or whatever, they're going to be putting clean label requirements on you and things like that. And then still yet, there's lots of fragmentation in the market. Everybody knows this. They see it. A lot of small players. It's regulated, and oftentimes the regulations are insurmountable. It's also fast moving. So one of those things where, if you have products that you can really look at over time, it's pretty good to continuously put out new products, especially on a consumer side. So just to go over this very quickly, growers, processors, manufacturers, and brands, you got to understand where you sit in that eco space, where you sit. These are our customers, but from the standpoint of looking at who your customers are, you really got to know your customers. So let me talk a little bit about what the profitable sectors are in the ancillary equipment. The first one is proprietary equipment. If you look at some of the equipment purveyors that are out there that are servicing the extractor and also the ancillary equipment markets, they're pretty profitable. They have good margins. They have great EBITDAs. And so they're not really pulling a lot of negative EBITDA numbers. A lot of them are private. For example, the second one would be the laboratory and GMP services market. Those are laboratory services market. Those are typically pretty profitable. It's a fee for service type of work. There's lots of labs that have been popping up in this industry. Some of them good, some of them not so good. But it's important to know that those laboratories and those services, since they're required and needed, with the right marketing plan, they really can be very profitable. We have a laboratory here. We don't do other people's samples with it, but it's very important that you have as a part of your workflow. For example, if you're running a manufacturing facility, that you have those quality control, quality assurance aspects to your business. So, and then unique and proprietary packaging focused on compliancy and fashion. Okay, so this is something where distributor models for packaging and things like that, they're typically very low margin. But if you can, for example, make your own packaging with your own molds and make those very fashionable so that they become something where you're talking about better margins, like a 40, 50, even 50% gross margin, then you really have a good business. So there's lots of opportunities for that, and I think that you'll be seeing a lot more unique packaging. People who are going to invest in tooling and things like that to really produce some even medical grade packaging. So that's all in store. So I'm just going to give you a couple keys for investment in your company. This is for investors and for those who are, trying to get people to invest in the company. Just some 3 keys from everybody that I talk to. Maximize the liquidity of your investment. I'm going to talk a little bit about that. I'm going to talk just slightly about debt, and then for criteria that we use to assess a client's business plan. It's really important that when you raise money, you have liquidity in mind. Your investor is going to want to have he's going to want to understand where his exit money is going to come from. Where is he going to make money in the situation? Couple ways to do that. You can just, for example, sell him the majority control, and then he can decide whatever he wants to do with it. He can take it public. He can, decide what he wants to do with the EBITDA that's generated from sales. So that is one way to do it. And you're there. You'll obviously be a minority shareholder, but that is actually a very good way to do it. Cash is still king in every business. Always has been that way through all of millennia. And so oftentimes, if you can get someone to take your business over and you can work for them, that's probably a really good option. And then also preferential payout on earnings. Sometimes that works, sometimes that doesn't. Most investors, from what I know, don't buy that because there's always a need for EBIT. And there's always a need for more working capital. So it turns out that, EBIT is not really distributed, or, the distributions are very few and far between. So the investor is not too keen on that typically. The other way to do it is to engage in a registered or unregistered public offering that results in freely traded shares. Something that we are looking at for our company very closely is the Regulation A. This is for companies that are maybe in the 20 to maybe 10 to $20 million. They're looking to really grow out. You can have a public offering of 20 to 75 million, depending on the tier. It's fully tradable shares upon closing. They're exempt from regulation or registration, excuse me. So lots of really great benefits. I think that, you can talk to your investment advisor and really understand, hey, what are the different options for for a public offering. It's not just an IPO. There's ways you can do it by combining an RTO and this Regulation A, and really doing a great job at going and looking at the market. So one of the interesting things about this particular regulation is that you're able to test the waters with offerings ahead of time with those who will listen. So you can kind of pre-test the waters without having to, be really restricted in what you say. A lot of times in a typical IPO, you would have a very restricted amount of time. So also it allows you to crowdfund. So there's other pipe, Reg D, Reg S, SPAC, IPO. Just suffice it to say that there's a lot of really good options for you guys. You should talk to an investment advisor. If you have, especially if you have sales with EBIT, which means profit, a profitable sales. If you have target acquisitions, if you have an aggressive growth plan, if you have ongoing need for capital, these are all reasons why you would want to consider going public. So now I'm just going to talk quickly about debt. Every person that you talk to is going to.
You got about 45 seconds left, Dr. Thompson.
45 seconds.
Yep.
Okay. So every person that you're going to talk to about debt, you've got a really an important thing there to look at. So banking is not really a viable option for marijuana companies. Banks often confuse MJ with hemp, so keep that in mind. A lot of times people have a hard time getting debt for their companies, and PPP loans are a unique investment risk now, unfortunately. So anybody who's received a PPP loan, that's a real issue. So think about that when you're talking about it. So to close up here, there are a couple qualifications that we use, typical qualification questions that we use to determine if your business plan is viable. Do you have assets? Do you have a license? And most importantly, where are your customers? You should identify those up ahead of time. And do you have money for working capital? So also today is in a kind of very distressed environment in terms of companies that are out on the marketplace. So people are looking around for deals. They're going to lowball your company probably on valuation. And if you did well in 2020, they're going to discount that. If you did do so well, they want to count that. So my advice is don't waste a lot of time with national banks either, because you're going to have a lot of problems. They're not going to fund you probably. So there's a lot of brokers and people out there that are saying that they can do it, but it's very, very difficult to do. So that having been said, here's some resources for you guys. If you want to learn more about, the marketplace, we have a tremendous amount of mini courses and guides and calculators and podcasts. I hope you guys found it interesting. And yeah, thanks a lot for listening.
Thank you so much, Dr. Thompson. Very, very informative. One thing I always recommend, Dr. Thompson, after you're done talking, you can just put your key contact information or your LinkedIn, whatever the best way to contact you in the chat room. That'd be great for everyone here listening. And Dr. Thompson has some really great points with investors and some really great points also with exit strategies. Definitely a ball of knowledge. So thank you again. I really do appreciate that.